Sorry, everyone. Our clerks is just trying to resolve some technical issues, so if you can just bear with us. Thanks. All right, we can finally begin. We got a long day ahead of us. Welcome everyone for the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for January the 22nd. I'll start with asking if there is any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay, excellent. Seeing none, we'll proceed to just some prepared notes. While this public participation is welcome at this meeting, we are committed to engaging in a respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in immediate removal from the meeting, which is interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and more importantly, hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from the community members. And also, this is a formal public meeting to consider applications in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. Our first item is 6.1, which is the official plan amendment application and zoning bylaw amendment application for 485 Huron Road, and Activa Holding Inc. is the proponent. Mr. Seiler, I believe you are presenting first, so when you are ready, please do so.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, and members of Council. Before you is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the subject lands located at 485 Huron Road, which is proposing an accessory warehouse use in the form of a self-storage facility located at the rear of the property. The subject property is a rectangular-shaped lot which has frontage along Huron Road. The site is currently vacant, however, it has received conditional approval for an office studio use which is located at the front of the property. The surrounding neighbourhood consists of a residential building that is currently conditionally approved to the west, employment uses to the east, natural heritage conservation lands to the north, and lands that are designated mixed use to the south. The lands are being developed in conjunction with the lands adjacent at 495 Huron Road. The residential building at 495 Huron Road was considered under the existing zoning, and no request is being made through this application. The properties were also recently approved for a severance to sever the lands from each other. Conditional site plan approval has been given to 485 Huron Road, and a minor variance was also approved by the Committee of Adjustment for a reduced side yard setback along the lot line that is closest to the employment uses. The subject lands are located within a community node and are designated commercial with site-specific policy area 41 in the official plan. The commercial designation is generally intended to provide a range of commercial activities and are intended to ensure that commercial activities are well distributed, accessible, and able to respond to the needs of the city's residents, employees, businesses, and visitors. Site-specific policy area 41 prohibits dwelling units within the lands designated commercial and permits the full range of retail and commercial uses except for large retail commercial centers and major office uses. The zoning on the property is COM2 with site-specific provision 119. Provision 119 prohibits dwelling units on the property and permits parking on the lands for the adjacent property zoned Mix 3. Here's a summary of the proposed amendments before you today. To amend Policy 15D-1241 in the official plan by inserting the words including a warehouse use, this will permit the self-storage facility within the commercial designation. And amend site-specific provision 119 in Zoning Bylaw 2019-051 by adding Clause C, a warehouse self-storage use to a maximum gross floor area of 1,050 square meters shall also be permitted. Further addition of Clause D, geothermal wells are prohibited, has also been requested by the region. This slide shows both the conditional approved site plan on the left and the concept site plan on the right. As you can see, there are no major changes to the layout of the site, and that the addition of the self-storage facility will have minimal impact on what has been conditionally approved. The owner will be required to apply for a site plan application to add the additional structure and parking to the plan. We have an opportunity here today to redevelop a vacant parcel of land with a new compatible accessory employment use. The development aligns with the official plan and is compatible with the existing neighborhood and contributes toward a complete community. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, as they are consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan of the Greater Horseshoe, the regional official plan, the City of Kitchener official plan, and represents good planning and are in the public interest. I would also request that this goes to Special Council next week on January 29th, 2024, in order to meet the Bill 109 timelines. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim, and your recommendation has been noted. We'll proceed to our delegations first, and then we can come back to questions of staff. And first up, we have Pierre Chauvin from MHBC Planning, and we'll be attending and answer questions from the committee, and I think is representing the proponent. Pierre, welcome.
Of Activa Holdings. I don't have anything further to add to what Mr. Seiler has noted. He's done an excellent job summarizing the application, and here in support of that recommendation and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And I don't know if this is a question for you necessarily or for... You got to turn yours off. There, okay. Or perhaps for staff. But I'm wondering, whenever we say this is for employment lands and to contribute to employment, do you have any idea of employment numbers that we expect on this land from this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to this particular employment use, probably not very much. It is self-storage, as you can imagine. There's probably 2 or 3 full-time employees at most. There is another use on the property. It's the design center, proposed design center for Activa, and it's going to be relocated from their current location in the business park. And that does, I don't have the exact numbers, but there are a number of employees that operate in that particular building. So there is opportunity for employment on the site. And again, even if this use doesn't exist over time, all the other remaining uses will continue to exist, and that building could be repurposed for other uses, and employment uses will always be permitted on that particular piece of property.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. There's no other questions, but I'll just quickly ask one of mine with just the overall building, form. Is there any consideration of using environmental features that could make the building itself more sustainable?
Through you, Chair Singh, it's an excellent question. At this point, we haven't gotten there yet, but it's a great point, and we will certainly be looking at that. It's going to be a typical flat roof, so certainly opportunities for solar, other types of sort of passive energy as well. Okay. So.
Well, I just, if anything else, just pass those comments to the proponent.
I will.
And seeing if they can utilize some of those. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll open up for questions of staff. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And thank you to staff for this presentation. You need to turn my mic off. Sorry. Sorry. With regards to the question that I just asked Mr. Chauvin, I'm wondering, whenever we are looking at land like this, and we call it employment lands, and we're from an economic development perspective, we're maybe having perhaps say 5 at the most or something from that. How do we look at that whenever we're considering this from a planning perspective?
Just keep it on, Tim, okay?
Yep, so through the chair. So these lands are designated commercial currently, so other commercial uses would be permitted on site. The wide range of that are permitted within the commercial, so if they wanted to do retail or other office space or anything along those lines, those would already be permitted. They're just looking to add the warehouse use to this property instead of having it as on one of the other commercial uses. So like Mr. Chauvin said, it could be used as other commercial uses that would have other employment uses on site, but for the most part it would be just the warehouse use that they're requesting, and like you said, you would only have like 2 or 3 employees on site. Overall, we would just look at it because it's commercial, could be different uses, could be anything that could have more employees, but for this request, that's what they're looking for, just the extra warehouse facility on the site. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but
Well, I'm wondering if, can I make a comment now too and finish it off?
Yeah,
Is
there's
that okay?
no one else, so go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Oh, actually, yeah. Is this just a today thing, or what's happening?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is something I need to bring up with economic development, but, you know, when we only have so much land in the community, I'm not against this, by the way, but when I look at it from the economic development perspective and this being a nice-sized parcel of land, when we don't have a lot of employment coming from this, it's something that I think as a council we really need to think about. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Just following up from Councillor Johnson's question, I guess my question is, does planning staff is that part of the planning process to take the actual overall benefit of employment use into the community? I guess an example I would say, I'm inclined to support this because of the other Activa use at the front of the property, but supposing that they wanted to change the entire thing to warehouse, which staff are explicitly inserting into the zoning, are they allowed to take that economic development sort of quality into consideration when making a decision?
through the chair, they would be able to make that overall kind of decision to do a different kind of use on site. These lands were also always designated commercial to buffer from the heavy industrial lands that are adjacent to it, so that there was a buffer from the heavy industrial to the residential uses. So that's why they were always kind of designated the commercial to begin with. So if it was going to be kind of changed overall, that would be kind of maybe a different conversation that we would have to have at that time.
Okay, so, but staff could then, again, if they wanted to make this whole thing self-storage, staff could refuse the application based on inadequate employment use. Is that within your judgment?
Yeah, overall, with looking through the application, it could be one way or the other. I guess it would just have to see what they would be proposing at that time. We are limiting the size of the warehouse use for just so that they can only have it at the rear of the property and not still have that commercial active use at the front. So that's kind of part of it as well.
Okay, thank you. And you did reference Bill 109, so if this isn't approved by the next council meeting, I'm trying to remember, they get like half of their fees back?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll quickly just make my own. Again, similar to what Councillor Davey and Councillor Margaret have already addressed. I would say it's prudent for us to preserve the employment lands and the opportunity for economic development on sites like these. But I would have to say that we also need this type of usage across the city. As we densify, we need storage space, and as people look at smaller footprint, which is better development, better sustainable development. But again, if they need additional space to store, these type of opportunities provide that. So again, down the road, I think it could be repurposed as the market changes and needs change. So we're not eliminating this from our employment lands inventory per se, but I think we're providing the area and the neighborhood and the community a service that I think is required at the same time. So I would be in support. With that, all those in favor? Sorry? Oh, moved by Councillor Margaret Johnston. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, all right, on to the next item is the official plan amendment for 404-403 New Dundee Road, Klondike Home Limited. And Mr. Bateman, I think you're presenting first. Whenever you're ready. Just key in. Great.
Afternoon, Chair, committee members, staff, and residents of Kitchener. My name is Brian Bateman. I'm a senior planner with the city, and I'm pleased to bring forward a planning report recommending approval of a official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment that would allow for the development of 160 multiple dwelling units at this location on New Dundee Road. So this application, just before I get into the site context, I just want to let committee know this application was received in December of 2022. It was circulated to residents and staff during that period, and a NIM was held in January of 2023, and then there was a follow-up meeting with the Pearwood Court residents at MHBC offices in February of 23. All of our information, our technical information, has been posted on the website, and there's been updates on that website that residents can check from time to time and see that information there. So the subject site is outlined in red. It comprises 4 estate residential lots. 3 are developed with dwellings, while 1 is vacant. In total, these 4 lots represent 147 meters of frontage onto New Dundee Road. That is a regional road. It's number 12. It's 2.6 hectares in area, sloped from north to south, and the surrounding land use is it's primarily low-rise residential, that being singles, semis, and multiples to the north, east, and west as part of the Dune South community, and an emerging mix of employment, medium density, and institutional uses to the south, and on the opposite side of New Dundee Road, as shown on the aerial photo, as you can see. So it is a growing area. With site context continued, the lands immediately to west of my subject site, outlined in red, are proposed to be redeveloped with low-rise residential uses, and that application will be heard today by the committee following this application. Conceptual site plan, the development proposal comprises 10 blocks of stacked townhomes with 120 units in total. 160 units in total. There's 136 parking spaces, 1 amenity space, stormwater management pond, and pedestrian connection. There's a single point of access onto New Dundee Road, as shown. And really the intent of this design is to provide a building form that transitions from detached homes to the north to the more intensive employment, commercial, residential uses to the south, and the traffic associated with that, with a regional roadway along New Dundee Road, all while providing enhanced rear yard setback. And I will note there's a 14-meter rear yard setback on this development. The as-of-right zoning is 7.5 meters, so it's almost double. And there is also a buffer being proposed to separate the Pearwood Court residents from this development. And the developer, Klondike Homes, has committed to provide a very dense development to help screen and provide that buffer. Site plan approval will follow these land use approvals. We're only seeking land use at this particular point in mind, so there's a lot more technical details that will be sorted out through the site plan. And municipal services will be extended from Robert Ferry Drive and New Dundee Road easterly to the subject lands. Here's what the buildings are going to look like. These renderings are contained in the urban design brief, and that will help to inform future site plan application. And what I would note is if you look at the side view figure at the bottom left, you will see the effect of the slope of the lands on this property. You can see it slopes down. Just for context, the Pearwood Court residents, they'll be facing a 3-story portion. The part of the buildings facing New Dundee Road will be 4 stories, because that's the effect of the slope. And that's really what's driving the special permissions that they're asking for. So the official plan amendment that's before it, it's site-specific amendment. They're not changing the low-rise category at all. It's low-rise residential, and they're asking for an increased floor space ratio of 0.9, and the official plan currently allows up to a maximum floor space ratio of 0.75 without an amendment. And really that increase in floor space ratio is a result, as I've just explained to you in the previous slide, the slope. It's exposing more building face. That's counted towards floor space ratio. So the basement level floor that would normally be underground, that exposed area is counted towards floor space. The height is also increased as a result, but policies in the official plan, and you may recall when I was here with the Bridgeport application last month, when you're on a regional roadway, policies support an increased maximum height of 14 meters. And again, that's really to reflect a regional road. It's busier, a little bit more density and height along those corridors. So the zoning bylaw amendment. So the zoning bylaw amendment requests a change from Res 1 in bylaw 85-1 to Res 5 in bylaw 2019 with the site-specific regulation 372 and holding provision 49H. And really this will allow, first of all, for the use of multiple dwellings at this location, but also the increase in building height and floor space ratio. It also, 372 also enshrines the 14-meter setback in the zoning, so that residents can have assurance that that's always in place. And that's our best measure to ensure that. Holding provision 49H has been requested by the region of Waterloo to ensure that the servicing report associated with this land is to their satisfaction, and that'll have to be lifted in the future prior to development, and that will be done at staff level. So opportunity of this development, it will add missing middle housing to this area. It will provide 160 residential dwelling units to the city's inventory. Apologize for the typo. It will contribute to a diversity of housing in our established areas. It is transit supportive through increased density, and I know we talk about that, but if we increase density along these corridors, the transit will follow, and I understand the region is proposing a bus route along this location. And as I've noted in both my report and in this presentation, the design is compatible and context sensitive by that increased rear yard setback, the very dense screening, all will help to buffer those residents who live on Pearwood Court. So highlights in conclusion, I think recommending approval of this application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw from Res 1 to Res 5 with the special, with the site-specific provision 372 and 49H, and that 372 regulation will permit a minimum rear yard setback of 13.5 meters. I've given a little buffer because when you site plan, sometimes you have to shift things a little bit. Permit a maximum height of 13.5 meters and 4 stories. Again, that's due to the slope of the lands. Permit a floor space ratio of 0.9, again as a result of the slope of the lands, and to permit a 10% visitor parking rate. That actually is going to be omitted from the bylaw because the bylaw, as of right, already establishes that. So that was a mistake on my end, and we'll be correcting that in the bylaw. So anything greater than 81 units, it's a 10% visitor parking rate. Anything less than 80, it's a 15%, which I thought it was. So my mistake on that. And thank you very much for listening to me, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Brian. I have two people that have queued in, Councillor Michaud, Councillor O'Dooney. We have two other delegations, so we'll go to the delegations first, and then we'll come back to staff, but I'll take note of your order. I also want to bring to the committee's attention that we received a written submission from Wolf Musa, I believe, and our next delegate up is Pierre Chauvin again. Pierre, you're working overtime today.
Thank you, Mayor Chair Singh, members of council. Pierre Chauvin, MHBC. Here with me this morning is Paul Florica with Klondike Homes, and as well as Louisa Ocondio, who is, thank you, has assisted me on this application. And again, here in support of the application and the recommendation, as well as the change that Mr. Baton is suggesting to the visitor parking. So full support of the staff recommendation. I've prepared a few slides just to kind of go over some of the same slides or images you saw in the staff report, but just to emphasize a few other points. Again, here's an image of the site with New Dundee at the bottom of the image, and you can see the cul-de-sac Pearwood Court at the top of the image. Again, in terms of the context, this is a growing area. We have the Activa Ormston subdivision to the west, where there is a proposed elementary school. You can see that bare area in the middle of that subdivision, just I'll say to the northwest of the site. Lands front on the New Dundee Road, which is a regional road. There is transit in the area, albeit not on New Dundee, but it will be on some of the surrounding roads, Thomas Lee Drive, within walking distance. And I'll speak to some of the connections that we've arranged through our neighbor's property in a moment. And also the area has great access, as you can imagine, right to not only the arterial road, collector road, but also the higher order transportation network, the 401 and beyond. So Conestoga College, as you know, is just around the corner. So excellent location for intensification and reurbanization. This is a rendering of the site. Again, singular access off of New Dundee Road, full movement access off of New Dundee Road, with a tiering of the stacked towns, kind of sort of east-west direction. Again, this is largely dictated by the sloping of the property, which is sloping at the high end, at the top of the image, down towards New Dundee. So to work with the grades, we had to work and orient the units in this fashion. And as you've heard Mr. Bateman note, with those grades, that has necessitated these adjustments to the floor space ratio and building height that we're recommending or requesting. Through discussions with staff and our neighbor, which this application is before you after this application, with respect to the adjacent development, we've heard the concerns from the residents and other public input, as well as the city, of the inability to really gain access other than through New Dundee from not only vehicles but pedestrians to this site. And we took this issue very seriously. We do acknowledge that it is challenging, and we are working with our neighbor and have arranged to gain access, and we'll provide access through their site to the Ormston subdivision. And importantly, this is the Ormston subdivision, as I noted, has the proposed separate school in that subdivision. There are also a number of other parkettes in that subdivision. Not that this development won't have its own amenity space, but just providing a better connectivity from this development to the broader community. And until New Dundee is fully developed, which is a regional road, and which there are plans to redevelop we hope, next year, that there will be very limited sort of pedestrian connections along New Dundee until that happens. So we expect in the fullness of time, obviously, New Dundee will be fully reconstructed with active transportation networks along New Dundee, which will provide those connections. But in this interim condition, we're forced to provide some kind of connection, and we thought this was an excellent solution to do that. And fortunately, both landowners agree and have agreed to accommodate this in both plans. Again, not to belabor these are just conceptual images. These aren't the final elevations. This is a very similar development or development form that Klondike Homes is building elsewhere in the city. Back in the fall, you approved a similar official plan and zoning amendment on Morriston. This is the exact same type of townhouse. And you recall in that situation, we also had to amend the official plan and the height for the same reasons that you approved back in the fall. And again, it's really because of working with those grades that I'll call it almost that fourth story is entirely exposed, and it does add to that floor space ratio. But I'll show some images to the rear that, with respect to the interface with the residents, that show sort of that building height in relation to our neighbors, which was one of the concerns that was expressed through the comments and the neighborhood meeting. So these next few slides are just cross sections. The top images are they correlate with the red arrows you see in the bottom image. And you can see as you work across from west to east, which is on the left-hand image is west and to the right is the east, the height of the wall varies because of the grades, and the highest point of the wall is at the center of the property. And what we have is, as Brian indicated, we have over a 14-meter setback in that rear yard, and within that setback we have almost under a 2-meter high retaining wall. And above that retaining wall, there's about a 6-meter planting bed or buffer, which will be extensively planted and act as a buffer between our neighbors to the north and this development. And you can also see in relation to we've conceptually shown the block of the homes, proposed homes, or stacked homes in relation to the homes on Perrywood Court. And they're roughly the same height. I think it varies depending on the type of existing home that's there, whether it's a bungalow or a 2-story. But again, from the rear, from what they see, is really a 3-story building, which is permitted as of right. And again, these are just other images of that landscape buffer. We recognized very, very early on in this process that this was going to be a concern, and we initiated very early on in the process this design and tasked our landscape architects with coming up with an excellent and robust landscape feature along the back end of the property, which we hope will be not only an asset to this development, but also to the broader community. So again, these are just different images or views. If you go back one slide, the various numbers you see on the bottom image, 1, 2, 3, and 4, correlate to these images. So 1 and 2 looking kind of standing from the east, looking west, and then 3 and 4 standing on the westerly side, looking east. So again, you can see some of the homes in the background and some of the proposed dwellings in the foreground. So with that, I'll conclude there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis. Go ahead. It's taking a while.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thanks, Mr. Chauvin, for coming in. I guess my question is, and just reading the report, I noticed a lot of the neighbors that were concerned about, I guess, the retaining wall and all that. Was that bedding, that plant bedding and all that shown to the residents prior to I guess, seeing these concerns?
Your Chair Singh, I think I'm trying to recall what was presented. I believe there was some schematics shown at the time. There were certainly questions about the exact grades and things, and once we've dove into a lot further with our engineering consultants and our landscape architect. We were able to drill down exactly in terms of the height of and the variation in the height of the wall. And so this is a lot more refined than what was presented perhaps at not only the neighborhood meeting, but also our meeting that we had with the residents in February.
Okay. I'm just wondering if your client would be amenable to showing the engineering drawings and all that to ensure that their concerns are being looked at.
Through you, Chair Singh, we've offered that at the meeting with the residents, and that still is a standing offer, and we'll continue to, if they would like to share, we would meet with us. We still have to go through site plan, and when we go through that, a lot of those details will be, again, further refined, and we'd be happy to share those with them at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Michaud, did you have questions of staff or the delegate as well? Go ahead. Let me just activate you.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin, for your presentation. Grading is obviously a big concern. You mentioned it a number of times through your presentation here, and it is a big concern, a large concern of the residents. I met with them probably over a year ago in their backyards in Pearwood. All those residents have extensively groomed yards that they've spent a lot of time and money in, and so I can empathize with them and their concerns with regards to the grading and what could happen. So my question is there anything, or can there be anything put in place? I mean, the landscaping you've shown, the drawing that you've shown, the plan is wonderful, but should something happen to their backyards, let's say there's a slippage in, I don't know the terms here, so the ground starts sliding or water starts leaking into the yards, like erosion, thank you. So erosion takes place. Who do they fall back on for that?
Through Chair Singh, that's a great question, and ultimately, if it's found that it's our fault, obviously, first and foremost, it's our responsibility. So typically what happens in any construction is our contractor would do an ask and request if they're given permission to do pre-construction inspections of homes. So that goes to sort of vibration and damages inside the homes as a result of construction.
Has that been done?
That will be done.
Will be done.
Again, once we get through site plan and get to the point of construction. We're not there yet, but that will be done. In terms of sort of long-term maintenance of that wall, again, that'll be something that we have to go through site plan. It has to be engineered and detail designed and approved by the municipality, and this will all be designed and by certified professional engineers, et cetera. The responsibility of putting that wall in place will be our clients, the developer. Long term, this will be a condo, and the condo development will be responsible for maintaining that wall and the landscaping as approved by the site plan as approved by the city.
Okay, thanks. I'll have questions later. Thank you.
Rooney?
Thank you very much, Chair. I missed part of your presentation when I did come back in, though. You were going through the retaining walls, so you might have addressed this, but it looked like from some of your, from the pictures that were shown, it seemed more smaller, I don't know, I should call them trees that were being shown with the fence, that area, for the, what was it called, retaining walls. Is there a possibility that some of the trees that are being cut down to provide space, can they go back there so that way, you know, the bigger ones can provide that privacy? Because from some of the comments that I read from some of the residents, that was one of the concerns, privacy and also erosion. I am not, I don't know what I should call it, biologist or what, no, not biologist. That's
Arborist?
I don't know any about that. So I don't know if trees can help with slowing down of erosion. However, is that, you know, just to ensure that we're not losing some of those trees, but they're able to be planted back there?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a number of trees on the property, and our client is looking to, as where they can, not all trees can be spaded and moved. And where they can, there are a number of trees that can be moved, and they like to do that and relocate those trees Once we know we have this approval, then we can do some of that work and just get those established sooner in the process. There will be, whether they can be all moved, I don't know. Again, I'm not the arborist, like you say, neither are you, but we will do what we can to move and retain as many trees as we can. If not, they will be replanted. And again, that landscape plan will be reviewed and approved by the city's staff and be implemented through the site plan approval process. So I guess in summary, we're going to do what we can to save all the trees that we can move around and replant them on site as much as possible.
Chair, I don't know if this question would be more for staff, but I wanted to get your thoughts as well. From your experience and previous applications that you've gone through before projects, how can we prevent erosion to take place in things like this? Just from your perspective,
My
I'm sure I'll throw it to
perspective?
staff as well.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you really got to ensure that it's stable in terms of its slope and it's the angle, so they call it angle of repose. Ensure that it's as a stable angle. The materials are of a sort that aren't erodible, but also most importantly is ensuring that it gets vegetated quickly. And so often you'll see what happens is when a road construction, you'll see a lot of hydroseeding of slopes to ensure that the vegetation establishes quickly, and it's that root system that holds the soils and binds the soils together and prevents erosion. Again, those are just some things to do to prevent erosion. There's things to mitigate the impacts in the interim, like silt fencing and whatnot, and that'll be a standard requirement during construction, that silt fencing will be installed to prevent, if there is erosion, it'll get captured by that silt fencing and not ideally impact our neighbors or even our own property. So there are a number of things that can be done either during construction and post-construction, and ideally if it's built properly, it's landscaped effectively and establishes quickly, that you shouldn't really have any problems long-term with erosion or even the wall failing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Arduni, of course you can ask a similar question to staff afterwards for more clarity, but I think just for the interest of the committee, I think it's a good reminder that for a zone change application doesn't automatically mean that applicant can proceed towards construction. There are many steps in between, site plan approval being a part of that, and a part of those requirements would require likely geological, hydrological, and of course a structural engineering report that would exactly address the concerns that you have said, and those concerns would need to be met to the satisfaction of our engineering and our building division staff as well before any construction were to proceed. But I think staff can better elaborate that later. Councillor Deneau.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you, Mr. Chauvin, for coming in this afternoon. I just have a few questions. You mentioned condos. Are they rentals or owner-occupied?
The Chair Singh, they will be owner-occupied as a condominium. Whether somebody after rents it out, can't control that.
3-bedroom units?
No 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and predominantly 2, but some ones.
Okay. And I noticed, can I just make a quick comment? And I'll be done. I noticed that there were some houses that are going to be removed, right? And so how many families / individuals are going to be relocated?
I believe all of these have been vacated and are being rented by our client to month-by-month tenants.
Okay. My comment is, and I was happy to see in the report that all of those affected tenants will be relocated. Quite often we don't see that in this report, and it's usually a negotiation. And so this is a credit to Klondike and to the property owners for actually looking after the people that will be displaced. And I hope, going forward, we have more reports like that coming forward, that agreement has already been made in place. So kudos to you folks. And that's all I have.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you, Mr. Chauvin, for coming in. Just wondered if you could speak a little bit more about the sidewalk multi-use trail on New Dundee Road, because it does concern me that the primary access to this property will be from New Dundee Road. We want, a community to be walkable. And I know you've provided for pedestrian access, but could you maybe just go a little bit deeper on what you've heard from the region on their timing?
Well, that's a great question, through Chair Singh. We've heard 2025, and part of that also entails primarily the services that are required for this development, which our client is paying for. But we hope in the fullness of time, the typical cross-section of the region would include a multi-purpose trail along New Dundee Road, and probably that would be, that's their standard now in terms of as opposed to sidewalk. So there'll be similar to what you've seen on Fisher-Hallman Road, for example. So a multi-purpose trail, full urbanized cross-section along New Dundee Road. The timing of that, again, is up in the air and up to the region's capital budget. We've heard 2025, but again, if that gets delayed, then so does this development. We would like to get going as quickly as possible and see that happen, but again, we're in their hands somewhat. But in the interim, I think the desire line from a pedestrian perspective really would likely be towards the Ormston subdivision or that existing community. And we've made an arrangement here which I think satisfies that and allows for that connectivity ultimately to the broader, I'll call it New Dundee community.
And when do you feel the building would be complete and able to be occupied?
Again, if the region proceeds in 2025, next year, then we're probably looking at 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Thanks. I wasn't sure whether I should direct this to you, but I will, in case I could go to staff as well, maybe both. The 160 units, it's a large subdivision or a complex, I'll call it. I live in a condo, so I know how these work, and I live in a 118-unit condo. I have two questions. With regards to the entrance, that's one way in and one way out for 160 homes on New Dundee Road, does that not seem a little excessive and almost impossible?
Through your Chair Singh, not according to our traffic consultant, who said that this can function. This has been reviewed as well by not only the city staff but the regional staff, who's the authority on this road, and they've concluded that yes, there's adequate volumes here that won't have a negative impact on the movement of vehicles on New Dundee Road or even within the site. So there may be the odd delay, for sure, coming and going off the site during peak hours, but again, they're within acceptable sort of norms and not necessitating signalization or something like that.
So it must have down that a bit, because mine has 118 units has 2 entrances in that. So now we have 160 with 1. It just seems such a large amount of homes. The other question I have for you, is there any room or any option to entertain a 3-bedroom units in here? I mean, you mentioned the missing middle in this piece when you're at the onset of your presentation, and the missing middle is families, small families. I think it's hard for small families to live in 2 bedrooms and 1-bedroom units. We're seeing a lot of 1- and 2-bedroom units right across the board on all the developments. So would it be possible to put 3 bedrooms in here?
Just to be clear, I think it was Mr. Bateman that mentioned missing middle, but whether we can consider it. I don't know in the internal design whether that's possible. I won't commit to that, but we can certainly look at it and see what we can do to accommodate that.
Well, I think being where it is, and you talked about trails and the walking access into the Armstrong subdivision and whatnot. So you're looking at and actually there's playgrounds in the rendering. So there's a playground in the rendering. It's modeled to look like a family-oriented subdivision. So I would hope that we could have some larger units than just 1 and 2. So if you could come back with that, something.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you again for coming in. Yeah, I had a couple of questions to follow up on from my colleagues. First of all, I had noticed in the report as well that you had already helped relocate the people who were, basically this is replacing. So thank you so much for doing that proactively. That's really great. I was wondering as well about when you were going to have this done. So I think from what you said, it would be more 2026, which is after hopefully that multi-use trail should be going in, correct?
Ideally, that's when the road is reconstructed. Again, we're in their hands in terms of their timing, and so when that gets reconstructed, then yes, presumably that trail will be in place at that time.
And I completely understand that.
Yeah.
And also from what Councillor Michaud was asking as well, my concern about the design, which by the way, it looks really nice, but my concern was also the one-way traffic in and out of there. That's a lot of units, and especially if there's no sidewalks, if there's not a trail or something, for people trying to pass that, having to be on the grass or something, or riding their bike there, that's going to be really busy in and out there. And I can see traffic being backed up in there quite often, especially, between, let's say, 7:30 and 8:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
Have you thought about having more than one way in and out of there?
Again, excellent question. What we've done to provide, again, this is more for emergency access, provide more of a splitter lane, a separated entrance, so there's an island. It not only provides sort of for more landscaping, but it does provide, in the event that there's an emergency, there is 2 points of access. In case one lane is blocked, they have another way to go. And the exit is wider. There's a 2-lane exit coming out of this site. So in recognition of the fact that there may be vehicles who may be stacking up and wanting to turn left towards the 401. But again, I rely on the recommendations and the opinions of our experts and our traffic consultants. And that report and those recommendations, which said that this can function on one point of access, and this has been corroborated by the regional staff. And so I rely on their expertise in terms of telling me that this is adequate and can function. Will there be delays? I think for sure. And I think if you look at every traffic study, they will categorize what is an acceptable delay and level of acceptance. This doesn't meet that or exceed that threshold. And so, yes, will there be some perhaps delays at those peak hours like you're suggesting in the morning as people are leaving to work? There may be, but it's acceptable, and it's also internalized to the site. It's not sort of impacting the flow of traffic on New Dundee Road.
Thank you. I'm not a traffic expert. I feel like I'm becoming one, but I'm not a traffic expert. But I'm just thinking, again, like if someone's turning left out of there in the morning, I don't know. I'm trying to think about how pleasant we're making places to live, right? And when people actually move in and the actual usability of places, I have a problem with the one-way in and out as well. I'll be asking planning staff about that too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Pierre. That's everyone.
Thank you.
I'll take questions of staff. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Johnson and mine. I guess we're both on this topic. Is the concern with regards to the entrance of this? I don't know if you could name a neighborhood in this city that has 160 homes and only one way in and out of it. And that's basically what we're setting up here, because their homes, regardless of their stacked townhomes, they still have cars, there's still people driving them, and they all have a place to go. So how does that work, that it would work there, but it likely wouldn't work in any other neighborhood that I could think of?
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Just keep it on, okay?
Okay, will do. It's been my experience, well, first of all, like Pierre, I'm a planner, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I have to rely on the traffic experts who evaluated this proposal at both the regional level and their consultant, who both agree that a one-way access system will support. The only thing I would add to Pierre's comments is the fact that in my experience with the region, they really like to limit their access points onto a regional roadway. So even though two may function a little bit better, they still would prefer one and make it work. So I'm sure that's what's driving this, in addition to the fact that you've got traffic engineering studies that support a single access. They want a single point of access, and it's for safety reasons. The more points of access on a roadway can lead to more concerns. So
Okay,
that's why.
so just so I'm clear, then, this wasn't designed because the development, the design of the project, obviously another entrance would take away units, right? You can't, there'd have to be some takeaway in order to give another entrance. Was this designed because the region would prefer one entrance, or was it designed because the development only wanted to put one entrance in?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I really can't speak to that because I wasn't involved in those. What typically happens with an application submission is that terms of reference for such a study are established between, in this case, the region and their traffic consultant. I wasn't privy to those. I can only speak from just my experience. I know with regional transportation staff, and they do have a bylaw that does limit access points onto regional roadways. So if they can make it work with a single point of access, then that's what they would like to see.
This regional road is going to be reconstructed, and the speed limit's going to be lower in 2025, right? They're going to lower the speed limit. That was my understanding, and it's going to be reconstructed. So it still would only need, they still would only deem one as a requirement or as an option.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess to answer that question, yes, the speed limit will be lowered with the construction of the roundabout at Robert Ferry Drive and New Dundee Road, and the subsequent reconstruction of the roadway easterly to about Executive Place.
Okay. I still question the whole model of only one way in and out for 160 families or people living in units. I can't imagine the frustration it would be to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, or try to get out and go groceries with only one way out. Like I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a development this large and only have that. So I guess that's why I'm asking these questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Weidman, if you want to key in, and perhaps I think Mr. Bateman did try to explain about the region's bylaw, again, on regional roads, where they actually take exception, if you want to even, to add additional exits and entry. So maybe if you want to specify on that and elaborate more. And also to the committee, we did actually have one other delegate as well. We'll go back to delegations. That's okay. I think this is good information because in case they raise any concern about the traffic count and the access, this helps to provide some additional ancillary information ahead of time. So Mr. Weidman, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. And so we do have condominiums that have more units than 160 units with only one access point in and out in various locations of our city. And so there are other communities that have more units overall with one access point. I'm looking at the traffic study right now, and they're saying for this development during the peak hour in the AM, there would be 58 vehicle trips out of that site. And they may experience a delay of up to 46 seconds per vehicle. And so oftentimes trips are staggered throughout peak periods because people have different commuting distances, people have different start times, and so the vehicles don't usually stack at one given time. It's usually spread out over the peak period, and so transportation staff are satisfied with the results of the transportation survey.
Okay. We will go to the remaining delegate, Richard Piqueras. Richard, again, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and then there'll be possible questions of you afterwards.
Thank you very much, Chair and Council members. I represent Pearwood Court and part of the Dune community. I'm here to talk about number one, safety. Safety is a key element in any community. The next topic that I will cover will be Vision Zero, the KW, and we all know about what that is. It talks about reducing speed limits and reducing the probability of accidentals that could happen on roadways. The third one, community involvement and transparency. So I was involved with this from day one. I'm an engineer. I reviewed a lot of the stuff. And what I heard today was a mere, whether it's correct or not. I provided a fairly intensive report to Brian Bateman on all the concerns. They gave us an opportunity to talk to the urban planner. I detailed those things to the urban planner and resubmitted them to the city. I don't believe you have a copy of the meeting minutes that I generated that came back here. And there's about 22 pages, and it was submitted on about January 23rd. You should look for that, because that's transparency. Now, I shall clarify. Res 5 allows per hectare 30 units per hectare. I'll be on the conservative side. I'll give them the doubt. There is 2.68 hectares of land in this facility. That would be 76 units you should legally put on there in a Res 5. And here we are putting more people in jeopardy. Because 60 kilometers an hour will never satisfy anybody's requirement of being a victim when you get hit by a car. I live down there and I know it's 80 and everybody's doing 90. If it's 60, that's okay. People be doing 70 and the chances of survival are almost zero. And that comes from your direction. You have the reports, you have the understanding of what's going on there. We asked for to reduce the count to meet those Res 5 requirements. They don't have to be exceptions to Res 5. Follow the residential 5 code, and that would be 76 units per hectare. If you want the math, it's 147% above the Res 5 requirements of what's going on here. We asked for 2-story buildings. The initial plan was a 3.9 meter retainment wall. Now it's 1.9. I just found this out because it was just posted 10 days ago. That's okay. But what we see from our properties is going to be about 2.2 meters more. And that's because we want to go to 14 meters rather than 11 meters. Because there's a grade difference in the property. Well, deal with the grade difference. Why offer an oak card? This is not right at all. And that little placard card that you send out, it may sound like all complaints, but if I was to bring in the Dune community, that placard card went out on the 29th of December. It wasn't delivered to my house till the 10th of January because the post office wouldn't resume deliveries until January 1st. Was it convenience, or was it an easy way of saying, oh, let's not get the community involved because they don't know what's going on and there's limited amount of time to respond? We know all the schools are overloaded by 120%. There's 3 exits onto Dundee Road from this subdivision. Robert Ferry, Dune South Drive onto Homer Watson, and Pinnacle Drive. And there's over 3,000 homes. And there's going to be more, because the occupying land on Dundee Road is a regional road that also is defined as an emergency route for the 401. Not to mention, when site planners come in there, urban planners come into a community, and they present a report to you, did they tell you that there's 132 truck stop being built across the road? No, they didn't tell you that. They knew that. Everybody knew that. I knew that. I had to tell them. They didn't know anything about it. Now, 54-foot rigs, 132 right across from this unit. I applaud you for saying one entrance. But you're creating a traffic nightmare here.
Richard, if you can try wrapping up. You're past your time, but if you want to wrap up, please.
Pardon?
You're past your 5 minutes, but if you want to wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you. The speed limits are too high. There's no sidewalks. There's no lighting. The entire roundabout is only being constructed this year, but it's part of the farther end of this unit. The school board has defined that there will be no bus allowance to come into private roads. So now you're going to be busing people from a regional road, children. School board is making it very clear in the responses I read. I'm just astonished that there isn't more oversight and peer review of what's going on here.
There will be a question of you from the committee, so that'll give you an opportunity to
that's fine.
Perhaps go into more detail through your question, so we'll get to that part next. Councillor Michaud.
Richard, I don't have any questions. You've shared your information very eloquently and informative, and I just want to thank you for coming out as a delegation today, and on behalf of the other residents in that area, and I'm sorry that they were unable to attend due to the timing of this meeting, so I do appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's everyone. Thank you, Richard. All right, once more, any further questions of staff? That's all the delegates. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to go back to what our previous delegate had mentioned, a truck stop being built. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wouldn't have said it.
If you want to leave it to staff to answer.
Mr. Bateman.
Mr. Bateman, do you want to activate your...
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, so in the traffic impact studies then, was this taken into account?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure on that, to be honest. But those lands were zoned employment areas, so that's usually factored into any traffic study. So,
of big rigs, though? I know you're not. I get it. You're not the traffic. You're not the traffic guy. I'm just.
Councillor Deneau, what staff have said is that it's not a surprise that across the street are employment lands, so they would factor that there would be higher traffic volumes coming from those properties. So knowing exactly that nature of business, perhaps this is not sure of, but again, it is certainty of knowing exactly what the zoning and the intended uses of those lands across the street are. And that's not just across the street, but all along New Dundee on the other side.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thanks. Apologies if I missed this, but what is the Bill 109 deadline for this, or is there one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this one is not a Bill 109 application.
So it came in before that, okay. And depending what happens here, we're ratifying this at the February 12th council meeting, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a brief comment as well, Mr. Chair.
Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted clarity around the speed limit right now in New Dundee is 80 kilometers per hour. Am I correct on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes.
I believe it's a regional road, but what is the process to, or is there a process to be able to take it from an 80 to reduce that to a more friendly speed limit, especially if families are going to be moving into that type of area?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the region had to do an environmental assessment for the reconstruction of that roadway. Part of that is looking at safety factors, speed considerations. Those are things that are sort of evaluated through that kind of a study and then implemented through the design of it. So I think what we're hearing from the region is that with the roundabout, they've seen that typically that helps to slow down traffic, and with the measures that they're putting in place in terms of because right now it's a rural cross-section roadway. Unity Road has been out in the outer areas, as you're probably well aware, and is now only recently experienced the kind of urban development that we're seeing. So the region is responding to the fact that they need to upgrade sections of that roadway to accommodate the more urban development that is being seen.
Is there a proposed timeline for them to review some of those things?
Well, this section of, as mentioned already, or through the chair, as mentioned already, the region have undertaken an assessment from New Dundee and Robert Ferry Drive to Executive Place. So they're building that roundabout. We've been told this year. Mr. Chauvin has been told a different time frame. He might be more plugged in with regional transportation staff, but that's what they're telling us is going to happen this year. And with that reconstruction, there is a multi-use purpose trail being built on the north side of New Dundee Road, and there'll be an urban cross-section of that roadway and reduction of the speed limit from 80 to 60 kilometers an hour along that section.
Okay. And from my understanding from previous delegate as well, where would school buses be picking up the kids? I didn't quite understand that in detail.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that detail hasn't been determined as of yet. I mean, what the school board has advised us is that this will, this development and the development that is occurring on this and adjacent lands will necessitate an accommodation review. So depending on how that shapes out, will determine which school these kids go to. And I suspect, in terms of pickup, would probably be along Regional Road, or maybe it'd have to come into the development. I don't know. I mean, that's something the school board planners typically.
But for clarity, Mr. Bateman, again, when this development proceeds towards site plan approval, would the Nass School Board be circulated at that point?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And so at that point, based on the school board feedback, then the site plan would be accordance to those recommendations?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Councillor Michaud.
I just have comments, so should I just do comments or should I wait?
No, I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. You have a comment also? Okay, I don't see anyone else, so, because you asked, okay. You guys want to flip a coin? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their presentations today and for the delegation for coming in. I had a presentation by the developer on virtual one, and the development itself is very pretty. It's a lovely, looks on rendering a lovely place that you'd want to live and raise a family or start a family. To my first point, and I already said this, 1 and 2 bedroom units in 160 units does not serve well to raise families in. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this, in my mind, is for young professionals to come and go in vehicles, which means there'd be 1.5. I'm just going to say this: vehicles for everyone. So I'll go back to the one entrance in and out for 160 units. I can appreciate all the expertise around the table with the region and transit and whatnot, and transportation, but I still think it's not enough for this type of unit. I also, I reflect on some of these plans that have come through, particularly this week. You know, we focus so much on putting houses in, because we're mandated to do that, and we know there's a housing crisis, and we do our best to keep things going. But I worry that we're losing the sight of building communities, and we're losing the sight of the people that live there. I mean, all the conversations we've had, there's so many unknowns in this development as far as people actually living there. And we're planning this, and we're going to, if we approve this, then what happens? Then what do we have? So I think it's just something we, you know, should keep in mind as we go forward, that we really need to keep in mind with the communities that we're building, not just the buildings going in. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree the traffic piece is concerning, but at the same time, at the end of the day, we have to rely on our traffic professionals. I have also, through this application and others, I'm constantly frustrated too whenever there's a development that is on a regional road, which we have no jurisdiction over, and it's a real challenge. I don't think there's a mover for this, Mr. Chair. I'll be happy to move it, and I'll support it. The only thing I wanted to speak to a little bit is the inference. To be frank, you know, when I hear words like comments like lack of transparency, that's my ears perk up, because while I certainly would agree there was, for example, delayed mail over the Christmas break, because I heard about it through even some bylaw mailings that went out, that certainly was not the city's intention. The city operates fairly. We have no vested interest in any of these things, and I feel like I need to clear the air whenever that comes forward. In terms of the timing, even if the notifications came out on January 10th, this isn't the last opportunity to speak on this. That's why I clarified. It's being ratified on February 12th for anyone that didn't have the opportunity to make a delegation or discuss. So that's more than a month, even if they did arrive on January 10th. So I think it's important to be clear on that.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I'm happy to support this application. When you look at entrances, as Justin Reedman had mentioned, there's examples of this throughout the municipality, and I can think of two just right by my house when it's a regional road. And I know from my experience with the region as well, they're only amenable to having one entrance. The other thing with school buses, and I see it every day in my ward too, they're right there. The world doesn't end when they're on regional roads, that the school buses are picking up kids. And the other thing too is we are definitely in a changing demographic-wise with families. And I think 3 bedrooms is what people always seem to think is what the community needs, but I think there's quite a few that, you know, we have a lot of single parent families and other types of families that would love to be moving into something like this. So I have no issues with this development. It's in a changing neighborhood, and you know, and the region is going to be putting in a new road there where it's going to be multi-use trails. It's all going to come together. It's all going to be connected. I have this exact same type of development in my ward that just went through Highland Road. Same thing. Everything works fine. Everything works flow, and everyone's happy.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. There's no one else. I'll just make a couple comments on myself. I appreciate, Councillor Davey, that you kind of clarifying the very true facts about any question of transparency. I think I have a lot of respect for our planning staff, as well as the process of circulation. The Planning Act only requires us 120 meters, I think. The City of Kitchener takes it upon ourselves to broaden that circulation to 250 meters, and that's the very aspect of transparency, to ensure that as many voices that can be included do get included. And then on top of it, these applications don't get rushed into, you know, being stamped. Like Councillor Davey has said, this is the first iteration through a public meeting, and then it would be ratified in next week council. So anyone that has a concern can still come forward. So whatever is decided today is not the end of the story. We can have additional dialogue at that point. To some of the concerns that have been laid out, I think they are very valid point of view. I think, I don't know who said it, but we do need to be building community, so having a sense of, not that this shouldn't go forward, but whatever is going to proceed in development should fit and at the same time function well in that community. So, but that being said, I think where we're being overly cautious is, and I think this is a point that I made earlier, a lot of times we get kind of stuck in the weeds when we're approving a zone change or official plan amendment, thinking that we got to solve all those issues right on that spot. The fact is, the site plan process is quite extensive, quite a daunting task on behalf of the developer to prove that the functionality of their development works based on the policies and the parameters that this council, through our bylaws, has already set forward. And those are the concerns that we raise, that staff will once more reiterate with the applicant, ensuring that they provide a solution to the concerns that were set through the public input meetings, as well as from this committee and council. And on top of it, with the region, again, once more, this is not going to proceed for development or construction tomorrow. There's a lot of work that's going to happen in that neighborhood, especially with the regional road work that would have a reduced speed, as well as a multi-use trail. And more importantly, it's going to have roundabouts, I think, close proximity to either side. So we will have a lot of right in, right out turning into that subdivision, as opposed to coming into a faster roadway that's currently right now. The last point I want to make is, although I'm supportive, and I think this is also well mentioned about the 3 bedrooms, you know, we're not pushing our development for 3 bedrooms in our core, realizing that, you know, some of this development can't proceed in our suburban areas, and it's okay. You know, we have young families, we have diverse demographic in our urban area, and we should not necessarily force those, you know, cram those 3 bedrooms if you don't have to. But that being said, then we can't lose sight of when we do have suburban neighborhoods that development applications come forward, especially when it's low rise. It's understandable when it's high rise, speaking of higher cost to build, but when it's low rise, that's the opportunity to have more 3 bedroom. So I'm looking at, again, once more, the applicant's representative as well as staff to encourage that where we can in our suburban area to have a higher number of 3 bedrooms. Not to say the whole development, all those units need to be 3 bedroom, but I think it helps to build a diverse community within this development when you have all usable, you know, types of family units, from 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. With that, the item has been moved by Councillor Davey. There's an amendment before us. I don't know if you see it on screen. I'm assuming, Councillor Davey, that's a part of your motion? Okay, all right. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And once more, this is just passed through committee. This will now proceed to council next week, at which point council will finally ratify this recommendation from this committee. On to item 6.3, which is 448 New Dundee Road and higher properties. And Mr. Pennell, I think you are presenting first. So whenever you're ready, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hare Properties, the owner of 448 New Dundee Road, is proposing a zoning bylaw amendment for the subject property, which is outlined in red on the screen. The subject property is located on the north side of New Dundee Road, between Robert Ferry Drive and Pinnacle Drive in the Dune South planning community. The subject property is 1.2 hectares in area, or about 3 acres. It is an estate lot, and it contains a single detached dwelling that was constructed in approximately 1966. A relative of the property is currently living in the dwelling, and he intends to move out shortly, from what I understand from the developer. The lands immediately to the east, addressed as 404 to 430 New Dundee Road, were just considered by this committee a few moments ago, as presented by my colleague, Mr. Bateman. With respect to the surrounding land use, to the north, east, and west, the lands are designated low-rise residential and which permits singles, semis, and townhouses and other similar development forms. The current low-rise residential land use designation of the official plan, which is not intended to be changed in this case, already permits the use of the land for single detached and semi-detached dwellings. And the property is outlined in a red, with red dots on the screen for context. The owner has made application for zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning from Res 1 to Res 2 with a site-specific provision and a holding provision. As you can see, the lands immediately to the west are currently zoned Residential 4, which is the same zoning as what's being contemplated for this site, while the lands to the north are zoned Res 3, and the lands to the northeast on Pearwood Court are zoned Res 2. These are all low-density residential zones. And I should mention that this map is omitted from the report. However, it will be attached to the council agenda when the decision is being made. The requested application would facilitate the proposed development concept, which consists of 14 single-detached dwellings and 12 semi-detached dwellings. A future vacant land condominium application would see that each dwelling is located on a unit, which is very similar to a lot in a plan of subdivision, though there are some differences. Single detached dwellings would be a minimum of 292 square meters in area and would have a minimum lot width of 11.5 meters, while semi-detached units would be a minimum of 215 square meters and have a minimum lot width of 8.4 meters. It is proposed that a private common element road would provide access to the dwellings from Ridgemount Street, which would terminate at New Dundee Road. There would be no regular vehicular access to New Dundee Road, though this would be used for emergency purposes. A treed common amenity area would be located at the rear of the property. A second common amenity space would be located more central to the plan, about 411 square meters in area. There are a total of 57 parking spaces proposed for this site, including 17 visitor parking spaces and 2 barrier-free parking spaces. A stormwater management facility is located adjacent to New Dundee Road, and a 3-meter wide walkway connection to the walkway system in the adjacent lands to the east, which we just talked about, is also proposed. And this will assist in providing pedestrian connectivity to Ridgemount Street from the adjacent lands to the east. I would suggest to the committee that there's an opportunity here. The proposed development will increase housing choice in this neighborhood through a mix of single and semi-detached units as part of a condominium development. This development will add 26 units to the city's housing inventory. It will facilitate sensitive infill that is compatible with the existing and proposed land uses. The proposal would retain trees at the rear of the property within an amenity space. It would create an access to Ridgemount Street and prohibit access to New Dundee Road. It would also establish a walkway connection to the abutting development. It would use land efficiently, as well as infrastructure and services efficiently. Planning staff recommends approval of the ZBA application, the zoning bylaw amendment application, to change the zoning from Res 1 to Res 4 with 1, a site-specific provision to allow a 1-meter interior side yard setback on one side, and this is for single detached dwellings only. And secondly, a holding provision to prevent new uses until such time as frontage on Ridgemount Street is achieved for servicing and access, and that's outlined further in my staff report. And also a functional servicing and stormwater management report is received and reviewed to the satisfaction of the Region of Waterloo. Planning staff also facilitated discussions with the developer and abutting landowners on Pearwood Court to address some grading concerns. The report indicates that trees are being retained at the rear of the property. Those are shown in a diagram in the report. The length of retaining walls has been significantly reduced in length, And most importantly, retaining walls have been pulled away from the abutting lot lines by approximately 2 meters. As requested, the zoning bylaw amendment demonstrates good planning principles and is consistent with provincial, regional, and city policies. Thank you. I'm here for questions.
Okay, we'll hold questions until we go through our delegations. The first delegate up is Brendan Llewellyn from GSP Group. Brandon, welcome, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Singh and members of council, staff and members of the public. My name is Brandon Llewellyn and I am the planning consultant for the property owner. I'm joined today by Mr. Sumit Hare and Mr. Dylan Schnarr. Sumit's here on behalf of the property ownership group, and Dylan is a planning co-op student with us here to see how the wheels of progress turn in the city of Kitchener. So this is a unique opportunity to present this application, as we've just had quite a bit of conversation about the surrounding area, the adjacent development, and this development itself. So I will keep my comments fairly brief. I'm certainly here in support of the staff report. We've worked closely with city staff, with commenting agencies, and with the adjacent property owner to bring the application to the point that it is today in front of you. I think we're aware of the location on the north side of New Dundee Road between the existing Ormston subdivision and the property to the east, which was 404 New Dundee Road. The proposed development, this development's a little bit different than the other one, and is similar to some others within the city, but it's proposing a vacant land condominium, which therefore would have a private condominium road, providing access to the site, with a mix of single detached and semi-detached units. There's a total of 14 single detached homes proposed and 12 semi-detached proposed. The primary access, as Mr. Pennell identified, would be from Ridgemount Street. And apologies, this, of course, my plan is oriented in the opposite direction from the other plans, but north is the green area on the left side of the page. The access will come from Ridgemount, and that is subject to a future consent application that will be presented to the Committee of Adjustment. Through discussions with city staff, that application hasn't proceeded until we essentially pass this phase of approvals and make sure that the development approvals for this application and the land use approvals are in place. So that will follow, following a successful approval here. I think I'll just skip forward. This plan, the tree management plan, I think is important in the context of this property. Highlighted in green, again, on the left side of the site plan, or the north end of the property, are the existing trees that are intended to be retained. We had looked at a number of different development scenarios for this property. We had development pushed further up into the north, or the left side of the page. And it was through dialogue with the community and staff feedback and other comments that the plan ultimately was adjusted to retain those trees, which helped to reduce the size and number of retaining walls that were required on property, as well as allows for the retention of existing trees and a bit of a buffer to some of the existing surrounding residential neighbors. So we've certainly taken those comments to consideration, and the plan has been revised to the point of what's in front of you today. Just quickly, the development vision and the in support of the application, an urban design brief was prepared. Again, these will be single detached and semi-detached homes. They'll likely range in size of 3 to 4 bedrooms. They'll be 2 stories in height, and a sort of a modern farmhouse design is what has been proposed, or the vision for the development from the owner. To go along with this, there will be a future site plan approval process, which will implement a comprehensive landscaping design, as well as refinements of the grading plan and stormwater management. All that's been done to fine detail at this point, but obviously it's subject to further refinement and review during the site plan approval process, which again would follow successful land use approvals today, or in 2 weeks, I suppose, at council. So the zoning request in front of you today is to rezone the property from the existing Res 1 low-rise residential zone to a Res 4 low-rise Res 4 zone. with the site-specific request for a minimum interior side yard setback of 1 meter for the single attached. And that's just, again, to allow some flexibility of building on the site. And that reduced side yard setback has been considered in the initial stormwater management and grading design for the site, so that has been incorporated and can be suitably accommodated through the detailed engineering design. So again, the development in front of you, it's a total of 26 new dwelling units, a mix of singles and semis. The units will be built on a private condominium road with primary access to Ridgemount Street. And the access to Ridgemount really was held back from the approvals of the adjacent Ormston subdivision. City staff at that time had required the developer of those lands to hold an access block for potential access to this property. There is an agreement in principle between those two property owners for that additional severance to happen and that primary access to be provided through to Ridgemount. And because of the ability to have that access to Ridgemount, which is a local street, only an emergency access would be provided to New Dundee Road. So very little, if any, access is ever going to happen to New Dundee Road from this site. The connection between the adjacent properties, as outlined in Mr. Chauvin's property, has been agreed to between the two property owners. And certainly there's a spirit and willingness of support for the two property owners to work together as both of their developments proceed. So that's it. I think I'll pause there, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brendan. Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I think you answered the question I was looking for in it. In these 26 new homes, I believe you said they will all be, like even the smallest townhome will have at least 3 bedrooms?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it's a mix of singles and semi-detached units, and it's anticipated that they would all be likely 3-bedroom, maybe 4.
4 in the single detached, possibly across the street.
Yeah.
And this is immediately beside the development we just talked about, where we're concerned about 3 bedrooms.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Goes to show it can be done, but anyways. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. This is the kind of community I'm looking for. This is lovely. I mean, I like the fact that you got 3, 4 bedrooms, and the variety in there. Question with regards to what do you call it, vacant land condominium. So does that mean that it would become incorporated? That land would become incorporated, and these owners would pay condo fees, and all the landscaping and the snow removal and everything is done by the corporation?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, exactly. So the structure is a little bit different, but absolutely the road and the amenity spaces will be a common element for each of the individual unit owners, and they will be responsible for the long-term maintenance of retaining walls, the roads, landscaping, all those types of elements.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. That's all the questions.
Thank you.
Questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll take a mover. Moved by Councillor Michaud. It's our ward. And with that, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. I was just going to ask for it myself. I think on to the next item, which has, I think, 6 to 7 delegations. So it'll be a lengthy item ahead. We should take a 5-minute break. Committee's in agreement? Good. All right. 5-minute break. So let's just convene. Okay, so we'll probably get started in a minute. If you can start taking your seats and getting ready. All right, that was a needed break. Thank you, everyone, and appreciate the patience. We'll move on to 6.4, zoning bylaw amendment application for 86 Pinnacle Drive, and it's A&F Greenfield Homes Limited and Reserve Developments, Inc. And Katie, I think you're presenting first. Excellent. You have 5 minutes. Whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Through the chair, good afternoon. I'm here this evening to present staff's recommendation with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 86 Pinnacle Drive. There we go. So the subject property is located at 86 Pinnacle Drive in the Lower Dune community. The lot currently contains a vacant single detached dwelling and its accessory structures. And the lot's fairly large in the context of other homes along the street, having a frontage of about 42 meters. The neighborhood consists of a mix of low-rise residential dwelling types, cluster townhouses, single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings. There's a range in built form, in building height, in materials, age of construction, lot sizes throughout the community. The applicant's proposing to develop the subject property with a 16-unit multiple dwelling. It's a back-to-back townhouse form with stacked units. So it looks like here there's 8 units, but there's in fact 2, one on top of the other here. Parking lot in the rear yard together with a private amenity space. I just wanted to bring to your attention there was an oversight in the report, and the copy of the site plan in the report was actually a previous version. This is the current version that's on your screen. This was updated in March of 2023. The main differences are in this version, the building has been pulled back further from the street to help respond to some concerns from the residents. And in addition, the front yard balconies have been removed, and Juliet-style balconies are included. So you can see that on this copy. This is the elevation, and this is consistent with the staff report. So this is the front elevation of the proposed development. I did want to take a moment and just to go over some of the history, as this committee is aware. In November of this year, the city did give consideration to the Lower Dune land use study. So this application was originally received in 2019. And at that time, it proposed a 3-story multiple dwelling, so a more traditional apartment-style dwelling units. And at that time, the city was just initiating work on this study, and the applicant agreed to put their application on pause for 2020, 2021, and most of 2022 to allow that work to proceed. So they've been holding this application just so that the city could proceed with our work, with the study that was ongoing. In November of 2022, they did submit this revised application from the preliminary one for the townhouse style. And we recirculated notice at the end of 2022 and had a second neighborhood information meeting in January of 2023, and that was followed by an on-site small group meeting in February. As a result of those discussions and the feedback from the neighborhood, they did do, this is, like I said, another revision, so this is the most current development proposal that the developer has provided. So following those consultations earlier in 2023, they again decided and agreed to put their application on hold just to see how the Lower Dune land use study and the comprehensive rezoning proceeded. And so this application was on hold through the summer. Staff, as you are aware, recommended a mix of Res 4 and Res 5 zones in the Lower Dune land use study. And following deliberations, this committee and council elected to put a residential 4 zone on the majority of the lands, except for those that were previously zoned R6, which received a Res 5 zone. An appeal has been filed with the Ontario Land Tribunal regarding that decision. The subject lands are subject to a site-specific application. And so this particular parcel did not proceed because of that as part of the comprehensive review. So up to today, no decision has been made by this council. So the lands remain zoned R4 under our old zoning bylaw. And so today the applicant is seeking approval of their site-specific development application, and that they're proposing a residential 5 zone, so Res 5, and bringing it into our new zoning bylaw. They're also proposing I'll go back to this. They're also proposing a site-specific regulation that speaks to the front yard setback that they're proposing to increase, as well as a side yard setback a slight reduction from 3 meters to 2.5. So the lands right now are designated low-rise residential in our official plan, which permits a broad range of low-rise residential land uses. The zoning is proposed to be changed from R4 in our old zoning bylaw 85-1 to Res 5 in bylaw 2019 051 with the site-specific provision. And so that provision has two components, like I just mentioned, to reduce the side yard from 3 meters to 2.5 and to increase the minimum front yard setback from 4.5 to 6.5. And that's to help the building to be a bit more in line with the setbacks along the street. You can see that it has a bit of a sawtooth design so that the building is not square to the street, but is sort of incrementally stepped back. And the farthest setback next to the existing farmhouse on the other side is pretty consistent with how far that one is set back. So this is an opportunity to redevelop underutilized lands with a new low-rise multiple dwelling representing gentle intensification and a missing middle housing type. It increases housing supply and the range of low-rise housing options in the Lower Dune neighborhood, makes efficient use of existing services, infrastructure, including transit, parks and trails, roads, sewage, and water services. And staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application and find that it's consistent with the policies of the provincial planning statement, conforms to the growth plan, the regional official plan, and the city's official plan, and represents good planning. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Katie, for the presentation. We'll hold questions of staff until after. I want to bring to the attention of the committee that we have received written submissions from Anne McKnight and Marge Ruel. And also for proceeding to our delegations that are as registered, David Galbraith from UP Consulting.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Galbraith from UP Consulting, here today on behalf of the applicant. I've put together a short presentation talking about the background, the site context, neighborhood context, the evolution of the planning process to date and how the concept has evolved. And then I will go into the final development concept and the required zoning bylaw amendment application. So the subject property is municipally known as 86 Pinnacle Drive in the Lower Dune area of the City of Kitchener. It has a lot area of 0.2 hectares and frontage of approximately 42 meters. As you can see in the aerial mapping there, it has a jog in the property that corresponds to a bend in the road at the front of the site. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling that was constructed in the late 1800s, as well as a detached garage, both of which are proposed to be removed. And I do note that the dwelling is not on the city's heritage register as either a listed or designated property. So these two images here show the existing dwelling on the site. You can see kind of the state of the property itself with some scrub vegetation along the front. And then at the back of the site, you can see the detached garage, which is the white building at the rear. So this slide here kind of gives an overview of observed land uses within proximity to the site. So you can see the site with the red dashed line. The orange properties are two existing townhouse developments. The one immediately to the south of the site is the Cook Homes development that was constructed within the last couple of years. Immediately to the north in that orange color, doesn't show up too well on the screen up there, that's some semi-detached dwellings. The red property at the corner of Pinnacle Drive and Dune Valley Drive is also a office building, one-story office building with large surface parking lot, and that's separated by one other detached property in between the two sites. This image shows some of the building stock within close proximity to the site. So in the top left image, that's the semi-detached dwellings that exist immediately next to the site. The image in the top right are the dwellings across the street. The two homes just in the middle of that image are 1990s construction, and the building, the white building, I believe, is a building that's been renovated, and it's an older building as well. You can see the office building that's two properties away in the bottom left corner, and then finally the recently constructed townhouse development in the image in the bottom right. The site's also in very close proximity to Conestoga College, about a 5-minute walking distance, as well as a commercial node at Conestoga College Boulevard and Homer Watson. So the next couple slides talk about the evolution of the development concept. As you heard, in 2019, an initial submission was made for a 3-story apartment building with 16 units and about 28 parking spaces. The parking, as you can see there, kind of wrapped the rear of the site as well as the north property line. And at the time of this, the application was circulated to internal city departments, the region, as well as the general public, and there was a neighborhood information meeting. The neighborhood did express concerns with the type of building, the visibility of parking, compatibility with the neighborhood, but one of the primary concerns was letting the Lower Dune land use study run its course, and so because of that, the applicant was amenable to pausing the development application as that study was carried out. In 2022, a revised development concept was submitted, which changed the orientation of the site. I'm not sure if it's possible to move Councillor Chapman just a little bit so I can talk about the site layout there. But as you can see in this concept, 16 back-to-back townhouses were proposed. It was a more modern design compared to the original concept. But one of the key changes here is that parking was relocated to the rear of the site, and that was based on discussions with city urban design staff and in response to some comments from the neighborhood too about the visibility of parking. Following this meeting, as Katie had said, there was another neighborhood information meeting and a site walk and follow-up discussions with some residents directly across the street where some additional concerns were raised. There was still the concern about the density of the site and the type of housing, but some concerns that we were able to address following this submission related to the front yard setback, the materiality of the proposed development, and the balconies. So this final slide here shows the ultimate development concept now before you, which contemplates a more traditional design with peaked roof line, maintains a 16-unit count, and the general layout of the parking towards the rear of the site and a common amenity space central to that. I do note that no relief from the building height requirements of the Res 5 zone or floor space ratio are being proposed as part of this application, nor is any relief from the parking requirements of the city's bylaw now required either. In speaking with the file planner today, I do understand that a couple neighbors across the street have some concerns. There's still Juliet balconies proposed as part of this design, but my client is amenable to having those removed and not included in the final design. So with that, I'll pass it over to the committee for any questions you might have.
Thank you, David. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith, for your presentation. I'm just wondering about the parking, and I may have forgotten some things along the way because this has changed quite a bit. So you've got 22 parking spaces behind the building, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
If I can just pause you for a second, my apologies. Would it be okay if we can leave the site plan up as you're asking questions for the committee? It'll be easier for us to reference to what you've been pointing on. Just give it a second.
Thank you. So 22 parking spaces. With the transit hub coming at the college, is it necessary to have that much parking?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there has been a reduction in the parking that's being provided compared to the initial development concept. I think the original concept had 16 units and 28 parking stalls, and it has been reduced to 22 to incorporate this kind of design where the parking is located towards the rear. But what's essentially it's a 1.4 parking ratio that's being proposed here. So, you know, for 2-bedroom units, that would allow for certain units to have 2 cars, but the remainder would just be one car per unit.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Just for further clarity, though, again, if there's a desire from this committee or any suggestions or even feedback from the neighborhood to not have the backyard parking lot to be more imposing in the neighborhood, would the applicant be amenable to reduce the parking if that was the direction that was sought by the committee?
I would have to take that back and discuss with my client. I could probably do that as you move on to the further delegates, and I could report back. But I think at a minimum, the city's bylaw does kind of push for that 1-to-1 parking ratio. So that's as a bare minimum. I think that's what we would be looking at here.
So a bare minimum, you would want at least 1-to-1, but right now what is being proposed is 1.4, which is 22 parking spots.
Yeah, so I will have to ask my client about that, but I can come back to.
Does it help to clarify what you were getting at? Okay, good. Then we'll look at getting David up afterwards and we can get clarification. There's still more. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you for your presentation. Had a couple of questions, and maybe the first one will be more in terms of site plan, but the where the proposed parking lot is, what kind of a separation is going to be there? I understand there will be a wall. Is there a wall and trees? Is there, what types of things are there?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so I do note that the townhouse development to the immediate rear does have a fence along their property line, and that would be a requirement through the site plan approvals process for a board-on-board fence there. So I think we'd be looking at a 1.8 meter tall board-on-board fence at the back of the site.
Will there be any trees or anything? Anything else there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have the common amenity space, but it's kind of more located centrally to the site, so there would be some opportunity for tree planting along there. Along the rear property line, it's fairly limited. I'm not a landscape architect or an arborist, so I can't speculate, but I think larger canopy trees, I think, would be a challenge along that interface.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the buffer, both for aesthetics, but also for sound. If there's anything else that can be done there. I know it will come up during site plan, but it's a concern now.
Yeah. And one thing I can say to that is if parking is a discussion point amongst council, and if 1 or 2 parking spaces were removed, we would have the ability potentially to shift the parking lot further towards Pinnacle Drive and increase that buffer there.
Okay, thanks. I'm also wondering, between the two designs that you showed us here for the building, the one I know that the community had asked to, I believe, not have a flat roof. I'm wondering though. I mean, it looked like the materials that were used on the one that had the flat roof, frankly, to me, looked more aesthetically pleasing than what is proposed here. Is this in the colors and everything that's here? Is this what you have to do now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. These are preliminary drawings, so any of the elevations, they're assessed through the site plan approvals process, building materials as well. So we're definitely not handcuffed to this design per se in terms of materials, but there was a significant amount of comments talking about trying to mute the design. I think the second concept was a little more busy, more colorful, and I think there was some opposition to that.
May I also ask, this is obviously a structure that you've made before, like how long has this particular design been around for?
Through you, Mr. Chair, can you clarify the question? How long has back-to-back?
I'm just wondering if is it something like, is it 20 years old, 10 years old, 5? Did you come up with it just recently?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I can't claim that. Back-to-back townhouses have been around for as long as I can recall. There are some examples in Kitchener-Waterloo. I believe there's some on what is that, River Road near Ottawa, of some back-to-back stacks in that area, and then there's some newer back-to-back stacks out on Ira Needles by University. So it is. They used to. They've been called quads before as well, but it's a housing type that's been around for quite a long time.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
There's no other questions, just a quick clarification, and staff maybe can help me. What's the tallest fence that our bylaws allow?
Typically an 8-foot fence, so 2.4 meters.
2.4 meter, okay. And so going back to you, again, if there was interest, more specifically from the neighborhood and the ward councillor, to have a higher fence, which would add to a level of privacy, especially if you're going to have parking in the back, and so you have, light beams and stuff like that that infringes. Would there be any concern if it were instead of 1.6, if it were 2.4 meter fence?
Yeah, well, I think, again, we need to look at the existing fence that's on the adjacent property. I think it would kind of be counterintuitive to have a 1.8 and then a 2.4. It's not really achieving too much there, but it's certainly something that we could look at. If that's the direction of council, I think we could incorporate that.
Well, I think the fencing would be encompassing around the structure, part of the development, right? There would be new fencing then. It wouldn't be just using off existing fencing, correct?
That's correct. I think there would need to certainly be a new fence along both the north and the south property lines, and then towards the rear, I think you kind of work with the adjacent development there to ensure that it's an appropriate interface. But that could be worked out through site plan as well.
I agree, and I said these comments myself to others that again, a lot of this gets rectified through site plan. But I think getting some sense of acknowledgement and and support from the applicant that they would be willing to look at that helps us to determine on our part. So good, and that may be a question that you might want to ask your applicant along with the parking as well. Okay, thank you very much. That's everyone. Next up is Nelson Chikuma. Nelson.
Good afternoon,
5 minutes.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Whenever you're ready.
Please forgive my voice. We had our Frosh Fest on Saturday. I had to hype up our students a little bit. So,
do we want to raise the podium if we can?
All right. Through the chair, good afternoon, members of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee. Oh, thank you very much. My name is Nelson Chikuma, and I am the president of Conestoga Students Incorporated. CSI is the official student association of Conestoga College and represents over 40,000 students with over 22,000 at the Doon campus. Our organization has been rooted in the Lower Doon neighborhood for over 50 years, where the proposed 16-unit stacked townhouse development at 86 Pinnacle Drive is proposed to be built. Our advocacy efforts are guided by the pillars of accountability, affordability, equity, and sustainability, which has brought me here today to voice our support for the construction of the proposed infill development at 86 Pinnacle Drive. As Conestoga College maintains a strong presence in Lower Doon, students face challenges in finding housing near campus. This proposal, while small, offers additional housing near campus, but it is also suitable for a range of demographics outside of students to contribute to a diverse housing supply for all. CSI not only supports student housing, but we also support broader housing developments that improves general housing supply as it benefits everyone in the market who is seeking housing. Now, it is essential that neighborhoods and communities are developed to provide everyone with a variety of housing choices to ensure housing is equitable. This involves incorporating a mix of residential dwellings, such as single-family homes, semi-detached houses, townhomes, and apartments to create inclusive communities with diverse housing types and price ranges. Unfortunately, not all people seem to be in favor of inclusive communities that ensure housing options are equitable. This has been proven by some vocal Lower Doon residents who have opposed new development that deviates from single-family detached dwellings. Now, over the years, this opposition, combined with the general lack of housing across the region of Waterloo, has hindered the community's ability to offer diverse and equitable housing options. The truth is, the proposed infill development at 86 Pinnacle Drive exemplifies how underutilized land can be repurposed to gently increase neighborhood density. The amended proposal addresses concerns raised by neighbors, including the need for landscaped areas, parking availability, the development's height, and privacy. Additionally, it introduces amenities like a secure bicycle parking, promoting sustainable lifestyles for future residents. It also aligns with the Res 5 zoning that was recommended by city staff for areas in Lower Doon. By adding 16 dwelling units to the neighborhood, this project contributes to addressing the estimated 70,800 unit housing shortage in Waterloo region. Therefore, CSI supports the development of 86 Pinnacle Drive for its positive impact on housing supply, its considered approach to local resident concerns, and its contribution to diversifying the range of dwelling types available in the neighborhood. CSI appreciates the opportunity to offer our support and feedback regarding the proposed infill development at 86 Pinnacle Drive, and looks forward to continuing to work with the City of Kitchener to improve the availability of a diverse range of safe, affordable, and accessible housing for all community members. And as always, thank you to staff for always engaging CSI in these conversations as well, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Nelson. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Thank you, Nelson, for coming up for your presentation. Nelson, you made a comment about the residents and student housing, and that a lot of them, some of them are against students living in the area. Did you know that residents in Lower Dune go out every Wednesday and pick up the garbage that blows out of the recycling bins from the students in their homes?
I have been made aware of that through my commitment in the Town and Gown Committee.
And did you know that residents sit on the Town and Gown Committee and plan pizza parties for the students?
I do know that as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify that I don't want it to be painted a dark picture of the residents in Lower Dune, because they've lived with the students for 50 years. And they've embraced it, and they're working to continue to live with them. They just want developments that complement, or work to complement the area, not to eliminate students and not to eliminate student housing. They just want developments to look and feel like a community.
I think that is a fair sentiment to have, Councillor Michaud. And I just want to clarify that we're not of the opinion that the Lower Dune residents are against students. That particular comment was in regards to this particular development in general. However, I am aware of how reasonable the Lower Dune residents have been in conversations through Town and Gown, and also through our conversation about the zoning bylaws zoning bylaw discussions we had in October, November as well. I know that the residents of Dune care about the community a lot. It's a historic community, and they want any development that comes there to not only fit the aesthetic, but match the sense of community that they have in there. We're all for that as well. That comment was not to incite to antagonize anyone. It was just stating an obvious fact that there has been opposition to this development for a while, not to paint the residents of Lower Dune as some kind of villains, if I may.
Thank you, Nelson.
I think it's appropriate for me to add this comment. I can understand the passion with which Councillor Michaud is representing the interest of the residents and the entirety of the neighborhood. But I think at the same time, you're taking upon yourself to advocate in the interest of housing, not necessarily about the student conduct, which is in question, which I'm sure can be better, and hopefully you can relay some of those comments back. But it's more appropriate regarding the different diversity of housing stock that you're advocating on, and it's appreciative. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, Councillor Deneau.
My apologies, Mr. Chair, and to committee. I believe I have to declare a conflict of interest on this matter due to my wife working at said college.
Okay, we'll take note of that. Okay, that's everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We have Barbara Thomas.
Well, I'm one of those.
Barbara, if you don't mind, I think Councillor Ordouni has just keyed in as well. My apologies if you can just bear with. Councillor Ordouni.
Thank you. I'll also have to declare conflict of interest because I'm an instructor at Conestoga as well.
Okay, all right. So both those conflicts have been noted, and then so you will not take part in the vote. Barbara, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Lower Dune was rezoned less than 3 months ago as a Res 4 max neighborhood. Lower Dune has no buildings that meet Res 4. Res 4 is a significant increase for every single property that exists in Lower Dune. Lower Dune is comprised of single detached homes, semis, lodging homes, townhomes, and still no building meets the max Res 4 designation. The new Res 5 designated properties, which were R6, also do not meet Res 4. The new Res 5 properties include homes that have already been built and townhomes that come close to meeting Res 4 designation except in height. Res 4 allows for greater height than any building in Lower Dune. Every lot can now have 4 units where there was 1 unit. Every lot can have a townhouse unit or a multiple dwelling where there was 1 unit. There are no Res 5 buildings in Lower Dune. This means that within the Res 4 designation, there is much opportunity for growth and intensity of building. Rezoning 86 to Res 5 is a step too far and would set a new precedent and undo the max rezoning of Res 4 that was set less than 3 months ago. The new max Res 4 zoning was significant because this zone, while being a significant increase, would help maintain the historic character of Lower Dune. Section 3C1, Kitchener's official plan, development within or adjacent to these neighborhoods will be compatible with and respectful of the existing built form and character of the area. Pinnacle Drive is a short historical road. Lower Dune is the oldest neighborhood in Kitchener, with the very first land deed being signed in 1800 by John Bean for the area known as Dune. Pinnacle is bookended by history. At one end are historical homes, now a cultural heritage landscape area, and at the other end, an 1840 heritage home, with many other historical century homes between, including the one at 86 Pinnacle. 86 Pinnacle sits across the street from the new Cultural Heritage Landscape Park. There is so much inspiration for respectful design, it is staggering. The proposed development sits next door to a small 1.5-story home. This home was built in 1880, and it is less than 9 meters tall. The question is, how can an 11-meter-high, 54-meter-long wall box of a building exist beside a tiny historical home and be called compatible and respectful? Compatible in scale? No. Compatible in massing? No. It is a giant box with small peaks on the roof. Does it follow the pattern of settlement with front doors, front yards, driveways, garages, backyards? No. It introduces a backyard parking lot. This removes the eyesore and the mass of cars in front and places it in everyone's backyard. This does not change the eyesore, it simply makes it someone else's problem. Sure, the people across the street are happy, so are the buses and cars that drive by, but the people whose tiny backyards face onto this are now faced with staring at cars and all-night-long parking lot lights. There are no backyard parking lots in Lower Dune. Why? Because we are a small historical residential neighborhood, not an arterial road, which is where this type of development belongs. 86 Pinnacle is in the middle of Lower Dune. If you are designing a brand new neighborhood, sure, you can include homes that have backyard parking lots, but opposing this into an existing neighborhood on a historical street is not compatible or complementary and does not maintain the character of Lower Dune. A neighborhood should be designed for people, not cars. We should be building neighborhoods for living, communities for people, and not just cramming as many units and cars onto a site as possible. The new proposed development is simply too much. The mass is so staggering that simply pushing it back on the site pushes it too close to the neighboring home. It still does not align with the existing setbacks and protrudes into the streetscape. Even the stated FSR is too much. FSR is the intensity of use on a building site. The proposed building is 1/4 underground, and apparently the bedrooms in the basement do not count. But they do count because the people in the basement need parking. This development would start a new precedent that cannot be undone. Every developer will want the same: massive building blocks and huge walls beside historical homes and backyard parking lots. Res 4 provides a significant increase in development opportunity without creating developments that are inappropriate and will result in undue negative impacts on abutting lands. The proposed building is not one of a kind, it is precedent-setting, and it is neither compatible or respectful of the character and form of the surrounding community.
Thank you, Barbara. Did you say that the area doesn't have any Res 5 currently?
The R6 lots were rezoned Res 5, and those properties that were built already, they don't meet the res, they're not Res 5, they're Res 4. They're perfectly fine Res 4. So there are no homes and no developments that are Res 5.
We may want that clarity from staff on that one, but I think that I'll allow
They're townhomes, so townhomes aren't considered.
Yeah, anything that's built in as a cluster is Res 5. Anything that's street fronting can be a Res 4, but it has to be street fronting. But a cluster townhome, it doesn't have to be stacked, is previous R6 and now the Res 5. Just so I wanted to make sure that we have the right information, and staff are nodding to that.
Fair enough.
Okay. Questions of the delegation? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Barbara. Next up, Randall Martin.
Thank you. Mr. Singh, councillors, I'm going to churn some of the same ground. I guess it's plow some of the same ground. But this application presumably is being made under Section 3.C.2.52 of the official plan, which states limited intensification may be permitted within community areas in accordance with the applicable land use designation on map 3. So this area is low-rise residential, all of it. And their proposal is low-rise residential. So this proposal, the proposed development must be sensitive to and compatible with the character, form, and plan function of the surrounding context. So simply because it's residential and low-rise residential doesn't make it either sensitive to nor compatible with. And so there's an onus on the applicant to show why it's compatible and sensitive, and I challenge you to find it in either their justification report or the report from the city. They seem to suggest because it's low-rise, it must be compatible, but obviously that's not what the section says that you're proceeding under. Why is it compatible? Why is it sensitive to? It will be the widest, the tallest, the deepest, the most massive building on the street. Now, someone has to have the biggest house on the street. That's a given. But this is out of proportion to anything else on the street. As your planners will tell you, just because it's not the same or similar to doesn't mean it's not sensitive to or compatible with. But they don't tell you why it's compatible or how it's compatible. Nowhere in either of the documents filed in support of this, both by the city planners and by the planner that spoke on behalf of the applicant, they don't discuss compatibility. They don't discuss what makes this building compatible. There is some mention, I should say I'm a little unfair. There are some bold assertions that it's compatible, but no discussion of what makes a building compatible. And if I might, page 29 of their report, that is of the planning justification report, the proposed development continues to maintain the residential land uses currently existing on the subject property. Well, that's why we're here. We know it's simply an application for zone change, so of course it's still residential. But the height of the proposed development conforms to the height requirements of low-rise residential. That's true, but it is taller than any other street, or any other house on the street. As an aside, and I don't know why I think of it now, this cluster townhomes you've looked at, they're not actually on Pinnacle Drive. They have Pinnacle Drive addresses, but they are on a development internal to Pinnacle Drive, both of those developments. So when you're looking at those townhomes, they're not actually on Pinnacle Drive. So it's my submission they simply haven't met the burden that they bear to show you that it's compatible. Now they will say, and they have said, and I would hardly disagree, that there's a need for more housing, and this gets you more housing. It's clear it does, but it's not the only option. It's not either a single-family home or a 16-unit cluster townhome with the size of a building envelope that this requires. Those are not the only two options that are available to you. Indeed, I suggest that, well, I'm not going to tell them what they should build. I'm going to tell you that I don't think they should build this, that it's just too massive, that it is not sensitive, and I don't have a great explanation why it's not sensitive, except, I'm sorry, I can't, sorry. Yeah, I can't read distance. Each rendition has gotten, dare I use the word uglier? As we've gone along in time, it's just gotten worse in terms of the street appeal from the first to the last. It is in no way sensitive or compatible with a neighborhood that has many historical homes. I should tell you, the next biggest building on the street is the old Red Lion Inn, built in the, I think, 1880s. That's that. I mean, they could be bookends, but they're nothing like bookends. So that's it. I just do not think they've come anywhere close to meeting the burden that they have to meet pursuant to that section.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schneider, you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Thank you so much for coming in. As you were talking, and before that, I've gone on Google Maps and taken a little visual down Pinnacle Drive, and I see a whole variety of homes. I see the Dune Valley community at 50 Pinnacle, which is a fairly large development. So when you speak of compatibility, can you explain, like, for me, I'm trying to understand what the impact of this proposed unit would have on your lifestyle or on the neighborhood.
Well, is it going to change my lifestyle? No, it's probably not. It certainly won't. Firstly, I'd say if you approve this, then you've effectively zoned the neighborhood Res 5. How can you accept this and turn down the next application? So it will impact me dramatically over time. The issue isn't how it impacts me personally or my next door neighbor. It's, is it compatible with the build form of the neighborhood? And it's not. Like I said, you're right, there are these townhomes, but as I said, they're internal. They are, I must say, you can see the back of them this time of year because the foliage is off the trees. But for the most part, they're tucked in off of Pinnacle Drive. They're a separate neighborhood there, 50 Pinnacle. I don't think I've answered your question, but...
No, I'm just trying to get an understanding of you know, it just, to me, a new building comes up, I don't know how that changes things in the neighborhood. Like, it's not like a 30-story apartment building is going on.
No, it's not. And I've started out with that. They're asking for a zone change only within the low-rise density. That's what they're asking for, but they do have an onus. And they have not suggested that it is in any way compatible. I say it's not, just because of the dimensions of the building. In one of the submissions that are attached, we put in a diagram of what this building will look like next to the buildings. It dwarfs it. I'm exaggerating, but it's like that Amazon building now when you go south to Cambridge. You know, it's just out of proportion to anything.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Martin. Looking at 50 Pinnacle Drive here, so when that development went in, was that one of the first townhomes that went in?
No, it's the third townhouse development to go into Lower Dune.
Okay, and I think I'm looking at the right, I hope I'm at the right one. It's the Cook Homes one, right? I don't know if I can mention that. But
Yes, 50
yeah.
Pinnacle is Cook Homes.
Right, okay. So, I mean, when that was developed, it really, they worked and took into consideration the character of the neighborhood. I mean, they put that type of fence in. I don't know the technical names of these. And they tried to make it, give it a feel for when you drove by, it just kind of blended in. Is that the experience you had when you went through that?
That's certainly what they tried to do. And I think they've largely succeeded. As I say, I live to the north of that. As I look south this time of year from in front of my house, kind of a wall at the back of the townhomes, but you don't see that in the summertime.
Right.
It's
So you're looking at with any different, we'll say different new development comes in, if they just take a look and try to get the feel of the characteristics of the built, what did you say, the built form or built?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, frankly, I've been sitting here, as you all have this afternoon. I've seen a lot better builds up on the screen that I'm not sure I'd be totally happy with, but I'd be a lot happier with than what I'm seeing up there right now.
Okay, well, I want to thank you and Ms. Thomas for coming out today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Rabinovich.
Thanks very much for coming in today. And I just want to, pursue your comments around the front design, the front facade and the designs with respect to the buildings, and a feeling that maybe they've been moving less and less to what you and maybe the other neighbors are looking to. We saw more modern design earlier in the presentation, as opposed to something like this that had peaked roofs and so on. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about that was more palatable to yourselves?
Well,
recognizing that height in general is an issue.
Thank you for that. So yeah, the mass is an issue, but to be blunt, and I can't remember which one, but it was one of the Klondike buildings that I thought, yeah, well, if they're going to build that in mind, if they're going to build that, then build that.
Okay. So I think that's good feedback. I mean, we don't get into like site plan urban design.
No, I understand
here,
that.
But I think it's important that our staff hear that as they work with the applicant, because sometimes I think things like peaked roofs and so on get put in to try to stay true to the historical character of the other residents, and yet we also hear that sometimes it's better not to do that and actually have a distinction. And you're suggesting that maybe a distinction, if the height happens, is something you'd like to see.
But don't lose sight of my...
No, I haven't lost sight of the height concern, but again, I think, I drove through the neighborhood yesterday because I wanted to get a firsthand experience of the variety of housing that's there, as well as, there's an office building on the corner.
You know what? I live, and I go around, I don't even notice it most days.
Yeah.
It's tucked away, isn't it? And it's low.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but it's there. Anyway, my point being, we're trying to find this balance and all the competing things that we're trying to deal with.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone.
Thanks.
Next up is Marge Roy, President, ACO North Waterloo Region Branch. Hi there, welcome. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Good afternoon, Councillor Singh and members of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee and staff. I am Marg Roll, President of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, the North Waterloo Region Branch. Thank you for the permission to make comments about the proposed development at 86 Pinnacle Drive in Lower Dune. These comments were written by me and Mr. Gail Poole, the communications coordinator on the executive of our organization. The organization was founded in 1933 and the local branch in 1980. Our mandate is keep, fix, and renew. Lower Dune and Pinnacle Drive are the heart of a very early village settlement that became part of the city of Kitchener. We are opposed to the demolition of 86 Pinnacle Drive to allow for a development that contravenes the existing zoning bylaw and would allow a stacked townhouse development that is too large for the lot size. We suggest instead that up to 4 small units could be designed for the interior of the house. We also strongly recommend that any development be redesigned so that it does not come so close to the rear yards of neighboring properties. A smaller footprint would allow for a more green space and plantings that would soften the look of this development. Demolishing the house with the debris going to the landfill as a waste of the embodied energy that it took to build it in the first place. The Architectural Conservancy of Ontario promotes the idea that the greenest building is the one already built. This late 1800s house is typical of a modest home built with the gable facing the street. These houses were designed to provide a comfortable living space, but not to cover a large portion of the lot, leaving room for gardens, later additions, or other small structures on the lot. As such, the house contributes to the streetscape of Lower Dune and the historic continuity of the area. We are not opposed to development and change, but the change has to be managed in such a manner that it is not intrusive and blends into the existing low-rise neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you for presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Questions of staff? No? Oh, yes, you are. Clara Chow, actually, virtual. That's how I missed it. Claire, if you can see us.
Good afternoon, Community Council.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Go ahead.
I don't have slide presentation, and I apologize that my camera doesn't work with Zoom. However, I'm a homeowner of a unit on Pinnacle Drive. My concern is about the rapid increased population concentrated along the intersection of Dune Valley Drive and Pinnacle Drive in the last few years. While we have increased the number of dwellings, we did not improve the road conditions to accommodate it. The bus running along the single lane of Dune Valley Drive always have a problem turning onto the single lane of Pinnacle Drive. Let alone the service vehicles and emergency vehicles that might have to park on Pinnacle Drive to serve the needs. This has become a congestion corner. If we allow the amendment, it will open the possibility of the same request in the future of other units on the same street. And this is increasing even more density of the area. When we increase the density of the population, it requires more services to accommodate the living. I suggest that we consider improving the road conditions for this neighborhood before we consider bringing in more populations to the area. If you walk along Pinnacle Drive, if you pay a site visit on Pinnacle Drive, you will notice that there's no sidewalks on both sides. The reason being it wasn't planned to accommodate the amount of densities that we are foreseeing or planning to add into this area. And also, if you do a site visit, you will notice that Unit 98 on Pinnacle Drive, right next to Unit 86 on its south side, is between the 86 and the commercial building. From the landscape perspective, Unit 98 is a detached property that is being squeezed. The stacked house idea does not harmonize with the whole street. The stacked house, what you call the stacked townhouse, is a fancy name for low-rise condo. Well, I have to declare that I know no one who lives on Unit 98, and I don't know the owner of this property. I also want to mention that this is not on the regional road build, so the building height does not comply with the existing neighborhood on Pinnacle Drive. One of the speakers mentioned about the student housing. If you were in the council, you will know that many years ago, Conestoga College gave the piece of land on Homer Olson for Innisfield House. So if Conestoga College has the land to give to other organizations, they have to address their student housing problem. They have plenty of land on the south of 401, so they have to address that with the developer. Again, I echo to some of the council's comment that we need to build a neighborhood. If we are adding more density to this area, there will be an impact to the industrial house on Humawasin. That's all I want to feedback on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. I see no questions. Once more, thank you for presenting. So I'll ask the committee again, any questions of staff? Seeing none, okay, I'll take comments. Go ahead, Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for a referral till the next council meeting so I can have a discussion with the developer and staff.
Okay, so rather than a deferral, you're referring it because this would come back to
referral.
council next week anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, Councillor Davey?
Yeah, sorry, I'm inclined to support, but just if Councillor Michaud could detail some of the items she'd be following up with the developer, I assume general design would be one of them?
Yes,
Yeah.
the design and whatnot, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else, I'll take that as a motion and as a vote. So this would be referred to council and then giving opportunity to Councillor Michaud and staff and the proponent. Can I look at staff and the proponent saying that they can help facilitate that conversation over the next week? Again, it would have to go to next week anyways, so I'm hearing a nod from David. 3 weeks? Is it 29th? Okay, next is committee, the 12th, yeah, okay. It's still, that's not an issue from the applicant? Okay, good. So 12th of February to council instead of committee. So next week is committee, and then the subsequent council meeting is the 12th of February. Because this doesn't fall under, well, I'll look to staff to answer that instead.
So this application isn't subject to that timing? It's a 2019
That's what I thought. Okay. Okay, I think this would be a helpful conversation. I looked at the applicants and the representative. They nodded acknowledgement to make arrangements to meet with staff, the ward councillor, to have further discussions. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, so this would come back to February 12th meeting. Thank you. All right, that's all the items for today. In that case, can I take a mover for adjournment? Councillor, no. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, everyone. It was a long day, but I appreciate everyone's patience.